Abba Namaste, everyone. Christian Long, Life Enhancement Consulting, giving you a big and beautiful shout out on this Thursday evening for our Transformation Q&A Thursday, where you come and get practical answers to your questions that you can't seem to find the answers on Google. So let's invoke and start off properly. Place your hands on your heart. Be aware of your heart. Be aware of your crown. Be aware of your heart and your crown together. To the Supreme God, Divine Father, Divine Mother, respect and beloved teacher, Grandmaster Cho Koksui, Lord Mahaguru Jmeling, to Lord Buddha Kuan Yin, to Lord Ganesh, to Saraswati, to all the holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, to the angels of communication, angels of awareness, understanding, transformation, and mastery. To our divine selves or higher souls, we humbly invoke for your divine light, love, and power, for your help, guidance, and protection. Thank you for giving us practical answers to our heart's deepest questions so we may become better people and better souls. We thank you, Lord God. We thank you all. With gratitude, respect, and love, we thank you. We thank you. We thank you. So be it. Okay. Well, again, welcome everyone. We have somebody is preparing for yet another house visit or to sell her house. So she wasn't able to make this evening. So she just wanted to say hi to everybody. So let's see here. Must be the age. My daughter always asks the same thing. Very true. Yes, very true. It was funny. We went to a restaurant and I he looks young for his age. He's 15, but he looks young for his age. And the girl says, "The kid menu?" He didn't like that very much. That's classic. Anyways, so I'll give you guys a minute or so, 30 seconds if you want to write out a question to add to today's Transformation Q&A Thursday. Again, we like to have questions that can benefit the majority of the people that are watching this either live or watching the replay in a week or watching the replay 6 months, 12 months, 5 years from now, depending upon how far they want to go back in the questions over the period of the membership. I learned from Master Choa that some of the best questions are the general questions connected to the virtues. So if you ever ask the question or something like, "Master, how can we practice loving kindness and non-injury more often in our day-to-day lives?" That would always get him super, super excited because it's general enough that it would include everyone that's listening, but also he could go very, very deep with that particular virtue. And that would open up many, many different doorways. So that was always a favorite of mine versus asking questions that are super, 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 super specific that once the answer is given, it only benefits that person. And in some cases, it's not even a practical, even the answer being given doesn't help the person practically, right? Does that make sense? So if you think of questions, I have the little bar up here. It'll come up. But for the time being, let's start with the first question. So I pick up 50 burritos and donate it to a shelter so they can pass it out to the ones in need. Since doing it alone has become dangerous, should I pass the burritos out individually or give them to an organization and have them pass it out? So it's a really good question. So one of my mentors said to me many, many years ago, when we were talking about earth changes, right? Natural earth changes and man-made earth changes. And he says, do you know the areas that will be the most protected in case of some man-made calamity, like bombing, things like that, or forest fires or earthquakes or fill in the blank? He said, you know the areas that are going to be most protected where there's the most amount of service being done, where the most amount of service is being done. So do I recommend that people put themselves into harm's way in order to demonstrate that I'm protected no matter what? I have this shield of protection around me that I can put myself in the most dangerous of positions. No, right? That's not thinking clearly. So I don't recommend putting yourself into dangerous situations in order to be of service to others. So when I was living in Denver, we did a feeding program for about 8 years, every single week. in general. We missed maybe a couple months when I was out of town, when I was traveling, when I was doing inner work, but in general, the entire 8 years I lived in Denver, Colorado, every single week, we would do a feeding program, feeding program, feeding program. And I noticed within the past year and a half that the amount of homelessness, the amount of drug use, the amount of violence, the amount of mental illness was the highest I'd ever seen in my entire life of the 8 years that I'd lived in Denver. So yes, there were times that it was very dangerous. And I went with people. Sometimes I would do the feeding program alone. Sometimes I would do it in a group, or sometimes I would just have an individual with me. And typically the individual that was with me was a woman, somebody I was seeing, or a girlfriend of mine or something like that. And we would always stay very close together, because when someone's feeding the homeless and these people are either very hungry, very aggressive, or very not in their right mind, weird things can happen, right? Weird things can happen. So we've had people yell at us, scream at us, throw things at us, make special requests. They go, hey, do you have burgers without cheese? Do you have chicken burgers instead of hamburgers? Do you have money instead of burgers? So there's all these special requests versus here's a free burger. Have a nice Sunday, right? So the goal was always to interact with the people as little as possible. Not to say that we weren't recognizing them and we weren't giving them love and we weren't giving them acknowledgement, but the more you entangle yourself with that person, the more attached they become to you, right? Because how should I put this? People are attracted to light. So if you're a being of goodwill and the will to do good, you're a being of service. The spiritual cord is very big. Lots of light is coming down, and people, good, bad, or indifferent, are attracted to that energy. And it was interesting because on and off over the 8 years at this particular area in downtown Denver, there was also a church that would do a feeding program, typically on a Saturday afternoon and a Sunday afternoon, usually 2 hours before we did. So we would do the feeding program in the Sunday afternoon. So these people were already getting some kind of clothing, some kind of hygiene kit. So it's not just giving out food. You can also give out hygiene kits. You can give out gloves, mittens, hats, scarves, all kinds of things, depending upon where you are in the country and what time of year it is, etc. But again, if you're being of service, 9 times out of 10, you are protected. You are protected. But yeah, there have been close calls of getting hit with needles, having somebody cough on you, and who knows, COVID, influenza. During COVID, myself and the other person that I would do the feeding program with, we didn't stop at all. Never stopped. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just saying that as that's how I am about service. Once I commit to a time frame, I do it no matter what. Now, if I'm out of town, if I'm at a retreat, if I'm doing inner work somewhere else in the country, then obviously I can't do service right then and there. But there are many, many, many different types of service, right? So the question is asking, should I just drop the burritos off to our organization? Or should I give out the burritos individually to the people on the streets? Well, it's a judgment call. If you buy the burritos and you give them to an organization, the organization passes them out. The organization gets the service energy. If you bought the burritos, you get the money energy, right? We talk about the law of giving and receiving, sowing and reaping. You plant corn, you get corn. You plant money, you get money. You plant time, you get time. So if he buys 50 burritos, 100 burritos, 1,000 burritos, and gives them to an organization, he's getting a little bit of time, but mostly the energy coming back is going to be in the form of money, right? Grandmaster Toa Koksui started the feeding program in California in, this would have been early 2000, because he was, I think it was in Santa Monica, California, and he saw all these people sitting on park benches, sitting under trees, and he was asking the students, why are these people here? Because he couldn't understand the prosperity and opulence of the United States. Why are there people homeless? Why are there people just sitting on the streets? And it was given to him to understand they didn't have any money, they didn't have resources, they didn't have skills to get hired to do work. be compensated for that. So he went to an ATM. He took out as much money as he could from the ATM and just started handing $20 bills out to people on the pier. Not probably the best way of doing it. And then that was the foundation and the formation of the feeding program. So they went to they went and they bought a couple hundred burgers, and then they just handed them out to a group. And so that has been duplicated around the world. So every month, hundreds of thousands of people through the Pranic Healing organization are being fed. Maybe not always burgers, but whatever is the food of that particular culture or region of the world. It's actually interesting because running the meditation group and the feeding program for so long, I noticed it was interesting that we would have people that would come into the meditation group and we say, hey guys, after the meditation, we're going to be doing a feeding program. If you'd like to either contribute with your money, right? $5 for a couple burgers, $10, $50, we'll put it into the kitty for the next week or the next month, depending upon how the finances worked out. Or you can contribute your time, or you could do both. You could give some money and you could come and help us distribute the burgers. And inevitably, the new people that had come to the meditation once or twice that joined us for the feeding program, they would start doing what? Hey, have you thought about making sandwiches? Because burgers from McDonald's aren't very healthy. There's a lot of additives. It's GMO. It's this and it's that. And I said, yeah, that's a very good point. Are you going to be the person who buys the bread, the cheese, the lettuce, the tomato, the meat, turkey, tuna fish, whatever, and make them at your home for 25, 50, 75, 100 people every single weekend? Are you going to be the person to do that? And like, oh yeah, I'd love to, I'd love to be of service. Guess what? Do I ever see those people again? They never come back. They never come back. So that's why in Pranic Healing, we talk about goodwill and the will to do good. So goodwill is the crown chakra. The will to do good is making it a reality, is the materialization of it. So if you were homeless and you were on the streets and you were hungry, what would serve you more? A burger or cheeseburger from McDonald's with all of its additives, or nothing at all? Which would you prefer? Right? You would prefer the burger, even though it's GMO, even though it's not the healthiest option, even though it spikes your blood sugar. Which would you prefer, a burger or nothing? So it's people, they put too many barriers to entry to do service. And that's the thing I've noticed time and time and time and time again. They're so altruistic that they miss the boat, right? So it's better to be an instrument of goodwill and the will to do good than just keeping it in your imagination of, I would love to offer organic chicken sandwiches on whole grain organic wheat with, spinach and all of these accoutrements, right? The fancy things. But are you going to do that week after week after week after week after week, month after month, year after year, decade after decade? No. Right? So that's super, super important to be aware of. Super important to be aware of. Even when I was living in Sarasota, Florida, we would still do a feeding program for the homeless. And it would typically be pizza for some reason. We got good deals on pizza, so we would hand out pizza slices to the homeless people. But Sarasota, Florida is one of the hardest cities in the entire United States on homeless people. They have a lot of ordinances that, if you look kind of homeless, they're going to push you out of most of the entire city. So they're very, very difficult. But my son, even when he was teeny tiny, 3, 4 years old, he would go to the feeding program and participate and add value and help people, right? So again, goodwill versus the will to do good. The next question is kind of connected to the first one. I bless the burritos before I go do. I bless the burritos before I give them to the shelter. Can we bless the food ahead of time so I don't have to do it every time? So when we do service, we're not only physically feeding people, but we're energetically and spiritually feeding people. So if you were to do 50 burgers, 75 burgers, or you made food at your house, whatever that food is, you want to consecrate it or connect it to the divine by asking the great ones to bless it. So you do an invocation, just like we start off every meditation with an invocation, every healing with an invocation, every spiritual talk with an invocation. When you do service, you do the same thing. You invoke. So an invocation for a feeding program would look something like, to the Supreme God, Divine Father, Divine Mother, invoke for whoever you're connected to my respected and beloved teacher, Grandmaster Cho Koksui, to his teacher, Lord Bodhisattva Mei Ling, to all the holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, healing ministers, to the angels of this city, to the angels of the homeless, to the angels of the feeding program, to the angels of this food. We humbly ask that this food be divinely cleansed, energized, raised to the highest level of vibration, suitable for the consumption of those we serve. May these people be spiritually fed. May they be physically fed. We thank you, we thank you, we thank you in full faith. So be it. So that would be the invocation that you would use for a feeding program. So you have the recording once we submit this, and then you can just find the spot and go, what did he say? What did he say? Let me listen to that again. But that's pretty much what we use every single time in the beginning with the blessing the food. We ask that the food be blessed. And when you say raise the vibration suitable for the consumption of those that we serve, each burger is going to have the appropriate amount of divine energy impregnated into it that is going to affect each of the persons differently. So that person has a lot of anger, so they need peace. That person has a lot of sadness, so they need joy. So the energy will be calibrated by the great ones and go to the appropriate person. Does that make sense? And typically with a feeding program, we don't, in general, give more than one burger per person, right? Because obviously, if you're homeless, you're hungry, and one burger maybe is just going to take off the edge. So you want 2 or 3 burgers. Or you say, one I hear a lot is, hey, my wife or my husband, who's way over there, who you can't see at all, also needs a burger, right? That's a strategy that they're using. It's a self-preservation strategy that most likely they're going to pocket the other burger, right? So in general, you only give 1 burger per person or 1 slice of pizza per person, right? Or when we were doing the feeding program in New York and New Jersey, it's napkin, burger, cracker, juice, 1 of each for each person. And then if there are any leftovers, and you've gone through the whole line, everyone gets in line again, right? And then you run out. When you run out, you run out. The interesting thing about doing feeding programs is it's a level of mastery of your solar plexus, right? What do I mean by that? So the solar plexus deals with righteous indignation, and it deals with severity, and it deals with justice. So if you've ever seen those, what do they call the traffic cops, right? They say, all right, you come, all right, you go this way, you go that way, you, all right, stop, go, right? That's solar plexus energy. It's justice, severity, justice, severity. So in some cases, when you're leading a feeding program, your higher will, your ajna, has to control the solar plexus of the people that you're serving. So if you are not firm solar plexus and you don't have strong ajna power, they're going to walk all over you, and they're going to get 2 burgers, 3 burgers, 4 burgers, or there's going to be a fight. There were times I've been at feeding programs in New York and New Jersey where the homeless people who either knew each other and had beef with each other, no pun intended, or there was a outside homeless person they had never seen before, and they hadn't built trust or relationship with this person, there would be conflict. And we're the ones providing the heart energy, and we're saying, we're being generous here, eat this, feel better, take away your hunger, but there would be conflict. And so we would have to harmonize that conflict, but you have to be firm. So new people in the feeding program would kind of get manipulated and pushed around, right? Because they're not used to holding frame. And the homeless guy would say, hey, could I get another burger? Hey, could I get another juice? Could I get another cracker? Could I get 3 waters? Right? And we haven't gone through the line, so everyone hasn't gotten something, right? Fairness, justice, righteous indignation. So we would have to say no. And depending upon who it was saying no, if they say no firmly, the person would back off and go, yes, I will get back in the line. I will wait my turn. But if you're like, no, can you wait? Then they would be manipulative. They would try to extract more resources. So feeding programs are quite fascinating, right? But they're for service, goodwill, and the will to do good. The healing clinics that we do in pranic healing around the world is what? A form of service, right? So we're not feeding the physical body. We're maybe healing the emotional body, the mental body, the spiritual body. All healing is on the soul, for the soul. Okay. So the question is, can I bless all the burritos, all the burgers, all the slices of pizza for that month? Not really. Not really. Because it depends on how powerful your will is, right? It depends on how powerful your will is. So if you have the burgers in your hand, the burritos in your hand, the pizza in your hand, you invoke, the energy gets impregnated rapidly into the food. You give it to the person, they consume it. So they get the physical nourishment and they get the energetic nourishment. But just like if you left food sitting, the energy, it becomes stale, right? Same thing with blessings. Blessings eventually evaporate. It depends on the will of the person blessing it. How many people are familiar with essential oils, right? You have rose, you have lavender, you have tea tree oil. You can bless or consecrate those oils, but how long the blessing lasts depends on many, many factors, right? So the stronger the will of the person who's blessing it, the longer the blessing will stay there. But also, if something's blessed, right? If it's blessed, is it in a holy environment the entire time? No, because the environment is constantly fluctuating of high energy and low energy, right? So it's already getting tainted as soon as the blessing happens, right? So you're saying, well, I want to be able to bless 200 burritos over a 4-week period with one blessing. It requires a tremendous amount of will. And how long does it take to do the invocation and the blessing? A minute, right? So it's okay. Just do the minute. Everything's fresh, everything's bright, everything has lots of energy, and then you give it to people. And then when you close, right? So when you're done with the feeding program, the burritos, the burgers, the slices of pizza, whatever, you give thanks, right? You give thanks. And the thanks looks like to the Supreme God, Divine Father, Divine Mother, whoever you're connected to my respected and beloved teacher, Grandmaster Choa Kuksui, Lord Mahaguru Jmeling, to Lord Buddha Kuan Yin, to all the holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, to the angels of the homeless, to the angels of downtown, wherever, whatever city or town or province you're in, to the angels of the feeding program, the angels of the homeless, to my divine self, to my higher soul, I hereby will and decree that the good karma from this service and donation come back to me and my family many, many times. With the blessings of God, so be it. The blessings of the great ones, so be it. Okay. So you open with the invocation to bless the food, and then you close by saying thank you. And I ask that the good karma from buying the food and or servicing out the food come back to me in the form of something. Does that make sense? You want it to come back to you in the form of something: physical healing, emotional healing, mental healing, relationship healing, right? So that's you using the energies properly. Okay. So those are two very good questions. Number 3, when doing forgiveness on yourself, do you change the wording to reflect you are forgiving yourself or leave it as is? Typically leave it as is. It's also based on the intention, right? So the difference between white magic and black magic is intention. White magic is using your attention to heal people or to alleviate the suffering of people. Black magic is using the intention of subtle energies to take advantage or extract resources from people, right? So it's the intention that's different, but the mechanisms are the same. So when you're doing the forgiveness meditation, if your mind is wandering and you think the person you're forgiving is some separate being or entity, the effect is not going to be as powerful. But it's okay to be pulled back, because what's being forgiven is the higher self. How do I put this? Hmm. So humility is what? Knowing your strengths and knowing your weaknesses. Humility is knowing what you're good at and what you're not good at. So when you forgive yourself regularly, you're practicing a level of humility, which leads to self-honesty, which leads to seeing things as they are, which leads to understanding, which leads to transformation, versus being delusional and in denial about something. So when you forgive yourself, you go, you know what? I didn't see that situation clearly. I said the wrong thing, I did the wrong thing, and I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry to myself, right? If I could turn back time, I wouldn't have said that and I wouldn't have done that. But you know what? I didn't have the awareness, I didn't have the understanding. So you have humility of going, I'm not perfect, I make a mistake. But a person who has a lot of negative pride either says there's nothing to forgive, I didn't do anything, or they think they're such a horrible person that they don't give themselves space to forgive themselves or to forgive others. I'm so smart, I should have known better, so I'm not going to forgive myself. I'm just a stupid person. So remember, negative pride on both ends of the spectrum. So when you're not practicing forgiveness, you're practicing negative pride versus, hey, I made a mistake. I'm sorry I made the mistake. I've learned the lesson. The lesson is X, Y, and Z, and I will not make the same mistake again, and I will move forward intelligently. That's it. So forgiveness is self-forgiveness is more important because we do more things more often to ourselves. We are with ourselves 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We are not with other people as much as we are with ourselves. So we have to get very, very good at forgiving ourselves. Now, that doesn't get you off the hook from learning the lesson and not making the same mistake again, right? Because if you forgive yourself, but you have no awareness, no understanding of what to do moving forward, you're going to keep making the same mistake again, and you'll be right back into negative pride. Be like, yeah, yeah, I forgive myself, whatever, not a big deal. Okay. Does that make sense? I'm a namaste, Beth. So self-forgiveness, extremely, extremely, extremely important. If you can't forgive yourself, you can't forgive other people. Right? We're always like projecting it onto other people. Like, oh, he deserves to be forgiven. She deserves to be forgiven. Why? Well, because we're all in the process of growing and evolving. Oh, and you're not? You don't deserve to forgive yourself. Aren't you also in the process of growing and evolving? Don't you also make mistakes? Yeah, but I know better. I know better. I shouldn't be making those mistakes. Bing, negative pride. Right? Negative pride. I cannot tell you, even recently I've been seeing this a lot with clients. Forgiveness, forgiveness, forgiveness. The most resistance I've seen to anything for people to do is forgiveness, which is ironic because it's one of the most potent, powerful things you can do for your self healing and healing of relationships. But it's the biggest resistance of them all. In my experience, there could be something that's more difficult, but people have a very, very difficult time forgiving themselves and forgiving other people. Okay. Fourth question. How does one receive Shaktipat if the teacher is not in the physical body? Does it occur on the astral plane? Good question. So, Shaktipat again means spiritual empowerment. Shaktipat means spiritual empowerment. By the way, check this out. So, my card number for the room, right? This is the second time I've stayed in this hotel before. I stayed last time was in September of 2020, and the room number is 108. And for those of you who are on the inn, that's a holy number, and that comes a lot in my existence is 108. So I thought it was funny. She just says, "Yeah, what room number, or what room would you like?" I'm like, "Well, I guess the one that's closest to this door and on this floor." And she goes, "Okay, well, here you go." It's like 108. That's what I'm talking about. So your spiritual teacher gives you a Shaktipat for the purpose of expansion of consciousness. No spiritual energy, no progress. I'll say that again. No spiritual energy, no progress. Now, the teacher is constantly feeding you from above the higher soul. Your spiritual teacher, your Sat Guru or permanent spiritual teacher is feeding you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for lifetimes above your higher soul. So people get caught up with Shaktipats. People get caught up with spiritual empowerment, with spiritual blessings. And I think Master Ko said it best. So there would be a project that he would want to accomplish or that was given to him by Master Choa. So Master Choa would say, open up this territory, this town, this city, bring in this many students, bring in this many basic pranic healing graduates, advanced pranic healing graduates, pranic psychotherapy graduates, expand, 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 expand. And so then guess what would happen? Master Ko would be doubtful, fearful, didn't think that he could bring in enough students. And then if they came in, they wouldn't stay, or if they stayed, they wouldn't go to the higher classes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. By the way, the goal of an instructor is to have 30% go to the next class. So if you have 10 people in a basic pranic healing class, you want 3 of them to take advanced. That's a good instructor. That's a good instructor, 30%. Okay. So Master Ko would have these doubts, these fears, this uncertainty, right? And they would say, Master, bless me. Master, give me a Shaktipat, right? Spiritual empowerment, strengthening the connection of the disciple to the lineage, from the disciple to the teacher. Empower me, right? And he would keep asking over and over and over again throughout the weeks, throughout the months that he was with Master Choa. And Master says, just do it. But Master, spiritual empowerment, Shaktipat, Master. He goes, you are empowered when you do the work. Never forget that. That is a super important lesson. Just like we talked about service in the beginning. When you do service, you are empowered. When you do service, you are taken care of. Not the other way around. Right? So this particular student is asking, how does one receive Shaktipat if the teacher is not in the physical body? Number one, Shaktipat doesn't go to the physical body of you. The Shaktipat goes to your soul, which does what? Pours more of that energy into the bodies. The Shaktipat is not going to your body. It's going to the soul that then permeates into the bodies, right? Into the mental body, the emotional body, purifying your thoughts, purifying your emotions, into the physical body, purifying disease, right? But it's not going into your body. So when the teacher blesses you, consecrates you, as it were, it's to the soul, not to the bodies. So it doesn't occur just on the astral plane. So when the teacher's blessing you, the teacher's blessing the higher soul, which permeates the mental plane, astral or emotional plane, etheric plane, and physical plane. Does that make sense? Okay. Very important distinction. So people get so caught up in the spiritual blessing, Shaktipat, Shaktipat, Shaktipat. I've received Shaktipat, several from Master Choa directly, and from the Master Pranic Healers directly, which actually leads into the next question. Does any Pranic Healing Master in the physical body give Shaktipat? So to give you a story, many years ago, one of my mentors in Pranic Healing, this was, if I'm not mistaken, his last Arhatic Yoga retreat. So he hadn't been going to Arhatic Yoga retreats. He decided to go to this particular one because he was having some issues that he wanted to resolve. And so during the break, he comes up on, not comes up on stage, but walks towards the stage where one of the master pranic healers is teaching. And he just has a group of disciples around and he's talking. Now, this isn't Master Choa. This is a senior practitioner or a master pranic healer. And this particular, my mentor, very strong connection to Master Choa, was kind of the golden boy of pranic healing for a period of time. So he got, because he was advancing so quickly, he was given inner teachings, inner techniques, and certain blessings, right? So this particular master said to my mentor, he says, turn around, look at the stage, and look at the picture of master, right? Look at the picture of master, because there's always a picture of the teacher at any pranic healing event or hatha yoga event or any retreat. So he goes, okay. And so he eyed several of us to catch him. Like, to catch him from what? So it was one, two, I think 3 or 4 other people, myself included, were behind him to catch him. And so the master pranic healer says, are you looking at the teacher? And he said, yes. And he goes, hits him on the back heart chakra, right? Which is typically where Shaktipat is given in general. Back heart, ajna, or crown, typically, right? Those are the main areas. And he was gone, left his body. So we had to catch, in essence, a shell and slowly lower it to the ground. And he wasn't in his body for maybe 3 or 4 minutes, right? So we weren't disturbing him. We weren't talking. It was a reverent moment. And then we looked down, and all of a sudden he had the biggest smile you've ever seen on another human's face, right? It was intense. He was glowing, radiant, brilliant. Why? Because he had expansion of consciousness, because he had an introduction of a tremendous amount of energy in a very short period of time. So versus waiting months or years to receive that energy, is received almost instantaneously. Why was it so powerful? Because he's super conductive and super receptive to the energy of the teacher. So the master pranic healer, who is more conductive and more receptive, was the transformer of the energy. So the master connected with Master Choa's energy. Master Choa passed through the master and passed through the other disciple. And so we helped him back to his feet. And he says, now do you see that the teacher can work while not in the physical body? Right? So what people will do, this is where they go wrong. They will spend months and even years chasing that. They will spend months or years chasing the next Shaktipat. So guess what? And you know how we talk about in the Twin Hearts meditation, meditate on the meditation, don't meditate on the experience. That's exactly it. So what's the solution then? If you do the work of the teacher will give you more than enough energy, more than enough blessings, more than enough Shaktipat. I've received, without going into too much detail, Shaktipat from the teacher when I was doing lots of service for the teacher. Even though the teacher wasn't physically around, even though the teacher wasn't in the physical body, the teacher provides you with energy if you're doing the teacher's work. If you're not doing the teacher's work, why would the teacher give you energy? Right? So the energy is a drip. If you're serving 5 people, the teachers give you the energy to serve 5 people. If you're serving 5,000 people, they expand the amount of energy they give you. Now you have to be able to handle that energy, which is through your purification practices. Because think about it. Let's say you haven't worked on your anger. You have 5 people in your life that you're serving. You get that much energy. You just expand it by 5. And you're like, wow, I think I still can keep my patience and tolerance and, can still have inner peace, even though I get a little irritated with these 5 people sometimes. Now, here's 5,000, the energy of 5,000 people to serve. Right? That's why some people think they're not making progress. It's because they're being protected. They have to purify more, purify more, purify more, and then they handle more responsibility. That's how it works. So if you want Shaktipat, spread the teacher's work, do healings, do service, promote the teacher's teachings, promote the books, the classes, the other masters. This, just as in with pranic healing, this is with any spiritual school. By the way, the teacher is karmically obligated to the student. So when the student does work for the teacher is karmically obligated to serve, to not serve, but to provide the student with energy and blessings. But what do most people do? Gimme, 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 then I'll do your work. That's why it doesn't work. Okay. Next question. What is the significance of the number 8? I have no idea. I know in the Chinese tradition, number 8 means good wealth or prosperity. And number 4 in the Chinese tradition means death. It's actually a misunderstanding because number 4 is the amount of petals on the basic chakra that deals with prosperity. So it's a misunderstanding. In, how do I put this? Just like in certain parts of China, south entrances are better for prosperity than north entrances. But they're looking at it from geographically, the northern part of China and the southern part of China. It's a misunderstanding. It doesn't, the north is always the direction of prosperity, no matter where it is. The northern part of China, the southern part of China, the eastern part of China, the western part of China, wherever the entrance is for prosperity, it's north. So the same thing with numerology. There's misunderstandings. Sometimes it's on purpose to shield or to veil higher teachings. So the intelligent people would go, wait a minute, I know what that really means, right? The intelligentsia, or people don't understand it. It's one of the two. It's either a veil or a shield to prevent the uninitiated from knowing, or the person who actually is talking about it, drew the painting, sculpted the sculpture, doesn't actually know the inner teachings, right? Because sometimes you'll see statues in certain mudras and you'll see the mudras are perfect and they're accurate, or you'll see the mudras completely wrong. Why? Either the person is doing it on purpose or the person doesn't know the higher teachings. It typically happens with the Hanuman pose quite often. So I hope it helps that person that I don't know. What is a spiritual book you would recommend? One of the top spiritual books I would recommend would be Origins of Modern Pranic Healing and Hatha Yoga. If you've not read that book, I highly recommend reading it. It's by Master Choa. If you have read that book, I would highly recommend reading it again. It is a treasure trove of inner teachings. And in essence, it talks about how Grandmaster Choa Koksui, where he came from, his origin story, and how he developed the major classes in pranic healing, which is fascinating. And you can see why someone like myself and other senior practitioners within pranic healing have dedicated 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years of their lives to propagating this work, because it's beautiful. It's amazing. It's, as science continues to evolve, I start to see more and more things that Master Choa talked about 20, 25 years ago. And I'm like, how did he know that stuff then when science is only now validating it? Aha, maybe he is a grandmaster of energy, right? So Origins of Modern Pranic Healing, highly recommend it. Autobiography of a Yogi, highly recommend it. For people who take our Hatha Yoga, there is a book list that says, read this book, this book, this book, this book, this book. So you have a holistic understanding of meditation, energy healing, and spirituality. I read Autobiography of a Yogi about a year before I took our Hatha Yoga. Reading it now, much different level of understanding and appreciation for the beautiful system that Yogananda created with his teachers called Kriya Yoga. Our Hatha Yoga and Kriya Yoga are very similar to one another until you go to level 1 or Hatha Yoga. Then it branches off. It becomes much more different. So 2 books I would highly recommend. In my experience, any serious spiritual person has read Autobiography of a Yogi. I've met people who that's like the only spiritual book they've ever read, and it changed their entire life. And I know other people who been on the path for many years and have never read it, which blows my mind. And then I say, you got to read it. And they read it, and it opens up many, many doorways of understanding for them. So highly recommend that book. Next question. This one's a little bit more challenging. So in quotations, breathing allows consciousness and energy to merge itself. What does this mean? So as I understand it, this is a quote from one of the master pranic healers in a live stream. Breathing allows consciousness and energy to merge itself. I have a feeling, I could be wrong, I have a feeling that there is a little bit more to this quote. I think something was left out. So light is energy with consciousness. So when we say we are a being of light, a being of love, and a being of power, light is the intelligent aspect of the soul. It's the ability to think and process information. So how is this connected to breathing? When you breathe, breath is more subtle than the mind. Breath is more subtle than the mind. It's called pranayama, right? Pranayama. So if you can control your breathing, and you go, well, Christian, what's controlling your breathing? Aha. If you can control your breathing, you can control your mind. And if you can control your mind, you can control your feelings, and you can control your body. So it starts with the breath. But what's controlling the breath? The I am, the light, and the will aspect of the soul. So breathing allows consciousness and energy to merge itself. Well, as you go higher and higher and higher, there's only oneness, right? So physically, I'm sitting here in a hotel in Missoula, Montana, and physically you're at your home or your office, right? So there's separation. But as you go higher emotionally, higher mentally, and higher spiritually, there is only oneness. There is no separation. It's like an ice cube and an ice cube, they're separate. As the ice cubes melt, right? They form a puddle, but you can still make the distinction of which ice cube is from which puddle. But then as the puddle evaporates and they merge with the atmosphere, you can no longer see the separation. That's what it's like on the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual planes. So spiritually, we are one. There is no separation. That's why the great teachers, oneness comes from the crown. So as the crown becomes bigger and 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 bigger, right? You no longer see separation. And I don't mean mentally or conceptually. The suffering of humanity is your suffering, and the blessings of humanity are your blessings. So you've heard of the term fanatical, or fundamentalist. So those are people who are of the 7 rays, they're known as ray 6 people, the ray of devotion, right? So they put all of their heart into a mission, into a guru, into a cause, but it's only that. Everything else is at the is in conflict with that cause. So fanaticism and fundamentalism are people typically with big hearts, right? Big hearts, love for the mission, love for the guru, the teacher, the cause, the nonprofit, but a very small crown because they don't see what? Oneness. They see only separation. So the bigger your crown is, the more oneness you experience with you and other people. You stop seeing the differences and you start seeing the similarities. And I don't even mean seeing, I mean experiencing them in your own being, right? So if you help somebody in a far off world from a natural disaster and you'll never meet this person, but you send $100 or $1,000 through a wire, that's a function of the crown because you experienced their suffering from the landslide, from the starvation, from the war-torn area. Does that make sense? Very important. So it's not good to be fanatical. It's not good to be fundamental. It means your crown is not so activated. Okay. Second to last one. Number 9. Have been trying to get into meditation for years, but have struggled. Should I be doing it daily? Do you do it by making a routine into your daily schedule, i.e., same time every day, like exercise? Should I start with a timer to ensure minimum time, if not doing guided? Any other tips or suggestions? Yes, I would recommend meditation every day. You get into a rhythm, you shower every day, you eat every day, you brush your teeth every day, hopefully, right? So meditate every day because it fills up your spiritual cup because your spiritual cup gets empty, right? You interact with the world, it creates friction, right? Creates irritability. So it weakens your mental body, it weakens your emotional body, it weakens your etheric body, right? But when you meditate, you fill up your cup, you have a bright aura, bright mental body, bright emotional body, bright physical body, and then you can interact with the world and not be so depleted. And then guess what? You start again tomorrow and your cup isn't as empty, but now you can expand your cup and receive even more blessings, which we talked about earlier, right? If you want to receive blessings or Shaktipat from a spiritual teacher, do the work of that spiritual teacher and they will bless you and they will give you energy, even if they're not in their physical body. And the blessing doesn't go to you, your body, it goes to your soul, which is permanent, right? That's why spiritual teachings are permanent. Spiritual blessings are permanent. So you should meditate at the same time every day, ideally, every day, and you should do it in the same spot because that spot becomes impregnated with energy. So each time you meditate, you can go deeper into meditation. You should also have your shawl, your pashmina shawl with you every time you meditate. Because as you wear it, it becomes impregnated with divine energy. So each time you put it on, it's like you're going into meditation that much faster. Now, if it is, and you want to wrap it in silk to protect it, also where you meditate, guess what? You want to keep that space clean. So if you meditate in a certain chair in a certain room in your house, no arguing in that area, no fights, no loud noises, no commotion, no having sex in that chair. That chair is a holy area. If you look at it over time, if you meditate in that same spot week after week after week after week, it starts to develop a spiritual cord. It starts becoming consecrated. So it's like you sit down and you're like, because you're plugging in easier. And then if you have your shawl on, it's even easier. And then if you do it every single day, you can go even deeper, right? Now, obviously, that's a level of truth. What's the higher level of truth? I am that I am. I am always meditating. I'm always one with God, one with all. But that takes years of purification and years of practice to have the realization of it. It's great in theory. Yeah, I'm one with God, one with all. It's the experience of that matters, right? So in the meantime, meditate daily, meditate in the same space, keep it protected, meditate with your shawl on, right? Wash it once a month in salt water for 5 minutes, hang it out to dry because it gets dirty energetically. Because yes, you're wearing it while you meditate, but as the divine energy is coming down, it's pushing out congestion in your aura and in your chakras. And so the pashmina material is absorbing some of the energy. That's why if you've ever had a super stressful day at work, you don't go home and lay in bed with those clothes on. The first thing you do when you come home is you take off your clothes. Why? Because you energetically feel heavy because your clothes absorb energy, right? And then lastly, should I start with a timer to ensure minimum time if not doing guided? I recommend new practitioners have guided meditations and then little by little by little wean themselves off of guided meditations. But you have to have presence of mind, right? Because if you just go, all right, I'm just going to sit and meditate here, people can let 30 minutes go by and they're just 30 minutes of daydreaming. They're not even meditating. They're just 30 minutes with their eyes closed. I don't recommend that. So a new practitioner, I recommend guided meditations and then little by little weaning yourself off of the guided meditation, but keeping your ability to practice awareness while practicing concentration at the same time, right? It's like wings. One side is concentration, one side is awareness, and having the wings going at the same time allows you to fly in the inner world. But you can't just be all awareness and no concentration or all concentration and no awareness. You have to have both. Okay. And lastly, can you feel worse after an energy healing session? Absolutely. Unequivocally. Couple factors. If the energy healer doesn't clean your energy body thoroughly enough and then supplies you with fresh energy, that fresh energy can push the congested energy around your body, right? So let's say you have a lot of stress energy in your solar plexus. They don't clean your solar plexus thoroughly, but then they supply your solar plexus chakra with fresh energy that can then push the disease, dirty reddish energy in the solar plexus throughout the whole body, creating a radical reaction, which creates like cold or flu-like symptoms because your body starts increasing its core body temperature because it's fighting an infection almost. So it's trying to squeeze the congestion out through the auric field or the health rays of the auric field. So yes, if a healer doesn't thoroughly clean a person well enough, they can experience a radical reaction. Also, if the healer is very powerful, even if the person's energy body is cleaned, two ways. The healer can go in and remove so much stuff so quickly. It's like breaking a dam wide open. And so even after the healing session, the person is still purging, releasing, 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 releasing. So all that pent up stress or pent up anger or pent up fear or pent up trauma got poked and then is gushing out. And so the healer will do their best to facilitate the flow of that congestion coming out, coming out, coming out. But after the hour-long session, hours later, the person can still be purging. There are things to do to minimize it or mitigate it so it's not so intense. But even me, who's been doing inner work for 21 years, I can receive healing from very competent healers. And the next day, like I'm out of sorts. I can't seem to get it together. because my bodies, plural, have not integrated and assimilated the energies. Part of it has to do with pride, inner resistance. So you want to feel peace, you want to feel bliss, you want to feel integrated and whole and complete, but there's resistance that you're unconscious of, preventing you from letting go of the old and vibing and embracing the new, right? So that period varies from person to person, but yes, there are cases when you can feel worse after an energy healing session. What I've noticed is when people have those radical reaction moments, or let's say they cleaned thoroughly, just the healing was so deep and the um, integration, the jump is so big for the person's energy body that it's kind of a struggle to get to that new vibration. But once they hit it in 3 days or a week, they feel like $1,000,000, right? So it depends. There are so many different factors. There's the factor of the practitioner. The practitioner is one factor, the receptivity of the person, the type of healing, the severity. I mean, there's all these different factors that determine how successful the healing is. Does it make sense? So one way of helping you receive healings faster and more efficiently, taking a salt bath before the healing, doing your practices, meditation practice, etc., before the healing, making sure the healer does their work, right? Do their meditation practice, expand their aura, clean their chakras, doing their work, right? Prepping themselves, and then giving yourself a day to assimilate, right? So you're not going to get a powerful healing and then that night go run a marathon, or the next day try to set a personal record at the gym, right? You're going to give yourself time to assimilate the energies. But it's really fascinating to see how people transform. There's not a one size fits all. There are markers and there are milestones to look for, but you have to be very aware of what's happening. It's not like, oh yeah, that's exactly what's happening. There's some detective work that has to take place. So, those are our questions for today. Do you guys have any other questions or clarifications before we close? We're right at the hour mark. Nope. Okay. Well, I'm glad you guys were able to join. Beth, you can check back in with the first 15 minutes when you get a chance. Any feedback is helpful. And by the way, thank you for your questions. It obviously makes it more enjoyable for me to answer questions that are relative to you guys, that are important to you. And again, it's about practicality, practicality, practicality. Let's keep asking questions that if that question gets answered clearly and succinctly, it's going to empower you to take the necessary action to move your life forward, rather than mental masturbation of, wow, that's so fascinating. Let's know more useless things that don't apply to me and never will apply to me in this lifetime, right? So, very good. So, let us close and then I will post this in the group this evening. Be aware of your heart. Be aware of your crown. Be aware of your heart and your crown together. To the Supreme God, Divine Father, Divine Mother, respected and beloved teacher, Grandmaster Choa Kuk Sui, to Lord Mahaguru Jameling, to Lord Buddha Kuan Yin, to Saraswati, to Lord Ganesh, to all the holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, healing ministers, to the angels of communication, the angels of awareness, understanding, and transformation, to our divine selves or higher souls. We thank you all for your great, great blessings. Thank you for helping us become better people, better souls, so we may transform. Thank you for allowing us to serve more, to heal more, to help more. We thank you with tremendous gratitude, respect, and love. We thank you in full faith. So be it, and so it is. Thank you. All right. Well, lots of light, love, and power to each and every one of you. Have a phenomenal evening. And I'm going to see what's going on with the shower. And I will talk to you guys soon. Bye bye.